talked earlier about the management team and the staff here doing a particularly good job. One of our key missions as an organization is to surge into places that things are unexpected. It was just 6 months ago when our country was executing a pivot from Europe to Asia, and we thought all was well. And then here we go in Crimea and Ukraine. And I have to say, the reason for this panel today is we're really proud of the work that's been done by this organization in coordination with the State Department, and who has also done excellent work on this as well. So thanks for doing this quickly. And Rob, why don't you take it away?
Great. So in November of 2013, about 2,000 people gathered on the Maidan to protest the decision of the Ukrainian government to suspend the process of integration into the European Union. Soon after there, RFERL was the first international broadcaster streaming live from the Maidan, but VOA and RFERL were both covering this issue right from the beginning. Over the next 4 months, I'd have to say that we have produced, and it's a hard thing to say after seeing the RFA's presentation, we've produced some of the finest journalism that I've ever seen out of work that RFA and VOA have been doing. And so with a generous interagency transfer from Undersecretary Stengel, who's on the line, thank you very much, and Dan Shribney was incredibly supportive of that, we've expanded the work that we're doing. In fact, Nenad Pejic was telling you today that the website that State Department helped fund in the Crimea has had an incredible amount of people coming to it from eastern Ukraine, not from the United States, not from Europe, but from eastern Ukraine. So today in the room, on the video screen and on the phone are the people who helped make that happen. They're representative of a larger sample. My last name is Boll. That is 1 syllable. 2 syllables or more I'm going to struggle with. It's a little dicey for me, so forgive me for everyone on the panel. But starting all the way in the end is Catherine Nieper. Kate is with the Office of Strategy and Development, worked very closely with Nenad in helping to lead the plan for the surge that we move forward, and basically contributed her own ideas as well as kept us all in line. On the phone is Paul Marzalak, also with the Office of Strategy and Development. He's been instrumental in working with RFERL and thinking about the growth of video and television in response. Also on the video, if you can wave your hand, Adam Gartner is the head of the marketing office and works out of the Office of Strategy and Development, has been leading the charge on getting us on all of the affiliates, which has reached a 19% at the last reading rating. So about 7.1 million people are looking at our content every night in prime time because of Adam and his team's work. Also with us on the VOA side is Miroslava Gongadze. Tell me I said it, got it close. Okay. Close enough. Good. Is not only team leader, but also the host and lead of Chaz Time TV, which is seen by those 7.1 million people every night. Adrian Karmazin, who is the Ukraine service chief with VOA and has led that effort. Mariana, on the video is Mariana Drach, who is the Ukraine service chief from RFERL. Wave hand, excellent. And then also is the Russian service chief from RFERL, Irina Lagunina. I got that closer. Thank you, Jeff Trimble, for the help. We're going to make this very quick, so I'm going to ask the panelists to not have to, everyone have to answer every question. We're going to ask 3 questions, and we're going to try to do it quick and focused to get us back on time. So let me start with you, Mariana. So looking back over the coverage of U.S. international media, what are you most proud of? What is the one thing that one or 2 things that you think we did really right?
I think it was very important that, as you mentioned, we were very early at Maidan when few people thought that this would evolve into mass protests and will bring millions of people across the country to the streets. And I think that we planned ahead, preparing for the Vilnius summit. We did not know that President Yanukovych will decide to turn his back to the European Union, but we planned ahead and had very extensive coverage of the preparations of the Vilnius summit and sent a good team to cover the summit and had internet marathon live coverage of the summit for 9 hours on that day. And it was important.
Video live coverage.
Video live coverage. It was important that we were there early, and this fact helped us to bring the audience. On the very first day, when we had midnight coverage of Maidan, a popular Ukrainian website, Ukrainska Pravda, picked up our signal, and then they were picking up our signal for many more days. I think that this went very well, and the fact that our video appeared on the major international TV channels, I'm proud of the work and of the courage of the Ukrainian colleagues in Kiev. We had the technological advantage, live view equipment. I think it is important that we had this equipment to carry the signal. And I think what is very important is the team dedication, because our colleagues worked for many hours, day and night, to cover the events. And one of the lessons is that we have to be, of course, prepared to unexpected things and adopt along the way. We added more people to the new media. And for instance, our Twitter grew from 10,000 in October to 88,000 right now.
Right.
And
that's perfect. Thank you very much. Let me turn to my VOA colleagues. Miroslava, you were nodding when she was talking about the team. Maybe you could talk a little bit about.
Exactly. I just want to support that notion, and I'm very proud of the work that our team did. We worked day, nights, weekends. Nobody complained for 3 months, actually, and we are stretched very thin. But we were able to deliver most comprehensive news, and I think that was the best coverage we did since we were established the news, TV news coverage at Ukrainian service in 2004, 2005. So I'm very proud of that, and proud of the team. The experts, they're all very professional, and they were able to deliver. Second, I agree with the online presence. It was very important because during the revolution, this new online TV stations came up to life in Ukraine, and we were able to connect with them right away because we have a lot of colleagues out there, and especially Hromadske TV, and we expanded our special coverage from Washington. So we cover special events, speeches, everything, and online TV is growing in Ukraine, and being present on online television was very important as well. And we extended our online coverage doing live streaming from the events in Washington, not from Ukraine, basically from Washington, and doing live blogging as well. So that was very, very effective, and we had a raise of audience, the growth of audience as well.
Adrian, can you give us, I would assume you probably agree with all of that, but can you give us, as Ukraine service chief here at VOA, what is the time or the day or the event that said, okay, we've got this, we're doing this really well? What strikes you in your mind and says something that you did or that the service did that was quite well done?
Well, I really have to look at it in a little broader perspective, in a sense, because I feel that our success in this period was really came about because really for 9 years we've had a very strong partnership with Channel 5. We've worked very hard to be the Washington bureau for Channel 5 and in a sense for the entire Ukrainian market. And so we've been building that, nurturing that relationship with them for a very long time. Sometimes we haven't had the best time slot on Channel 5. We're sometimes wondering, is this the best partner for us because we can't get a better time slot, but we just kept working at it until, the last few years we've been in a primetime slot with them at 9:40 p.m. every night. And they've really I think Ukraine has really come to rely on us for a really good comprehensive picture of what's happening in Ukraine. And so I think that's really the key to the success. Once the surge, once people started turning to Channel 5 in mass numbers, we were there and we were able to enjoy that 20% audience reach that they have now. And also we didn't put all our eggs in one basket. We had these strong partnerships with many different stations and interactives, and we're ready for that. And Miroslava can probably give you a flavor of what those interactives were like as well.
Just a few words that we have to use our advantage as being in Washington, since none of Ukrainian TV channels have a representation in Washington. Only one channel, national channel Inter, has a correspondent. So we were able to meet demand of Ukrainian TV channels to get Q&As and special reports from Washington, views from Washington, analysis from Washington. They needed that so much that they would call at night, they would call at 7 a.m., they would call during the weekends. My partner said that if Putin would ruin another weekend for us, I would go personally kill him. So they really need us and need that Washington coverage for Ukrainian TV.
Let me turn this over to actually Adam Gartner to talk a little bit about, Adam, when you saw what was happening in the Ukraine, what was the relationships like and what happened with all of the other affiliates? And then I'd like to ask Irina, from the Russian language perspective, what do you found outside of Ukraine, what you felt that we've done the best? And then I'm going to turn to a different question and ask various people, but Adam.
Well, from my point of view, we're very much in the middle of this process. We have a lot of opportunities that are still on the table as RFRL ramps up their TV operation and VOA expands it with some other folks on their team. There are some other opportunities that we are able to take advantage of, and these are limited shelf life opportunities as this situation is very much in flux. And I just want to, make sure that everybody knows that we need to take advantage of those as quickly as possible. I also want to say to my regional representative in Ukraine, Olha, that she was very fast-acting, very forward-leaning, and this is someone who has worked for us for over a decade and knows a lot of people in that market and was able to give us good, situation on the ground as for how the affiliates were reacting, new opportunities that presented themselves. And so one of the things that I also want to stress is that this is not a network that we're building from scratch right now. This is something that's been around for the last decade at least, with 35 radio and TV stations. It's a testament to these services that they've been able to keep that sort of network going. But we're not starting from zero. We're starting from a very strong network. And in very few places that I deal with do we have this big of a presence. And it's in the east, it's in the west, it's straight down the Dnieper River. So that is something that we need to be aware of. Also, digital platforms. I, as a news consumer, was absolutely glued to the English Live blog, and I still am. It's the first thing I look at when I wake up in the morning and the first thing that I see when I go to bed at night. And for any of you folks out there that don't speak Russian or Ukrainian, I highly recommend that you go take a look at that as well.
Yeah, you stole that line from me, I believe, Adam, because I did the same thing. Irina, talk to you a little bit about, because this is not just a Ukrainian crisis, this is a regional crisis. Tell us a little bit about what you think we've done well in the Russian coverage.
Yeah, Mr. Will, you first asked to give the outside of Ukraine perspective, but with Russia annexing Crimea and Russian troops stationed on the border with Ukraine, I cannot say that it's an outside perspective. It's very much inside right now. Nonetheless, what I found good in all this was that we also followed the Maidan story from the very beginning and very closely. And the particularity of the Russian service at that time was that there was practically no growth in our audience, just a slight growth, because basically Russians were not interested in what was going on in Ukraine until the annexation of Crimea, and then it all started to grow. But during this time, when Maidan was boiling, we managed to create this new community in Russia of those people who found themselves marginalized because they all of a sudden decided to step against the war and against the annexation after March 16th. And this community of people is still with us. They don't have any other platform. To some extent, it resembles the role that Radio Liberty played during the Cold War of supporting those people who wanted good and who wanted freedom and who wanted democracy for their country. One more thing that I would mention is that we are left right now practically alone in the electronic media, online electronic media as well, because Echo of Moscow, whom I wouldn't call our competitor, but our partner, better to say, is forced to maneuver in the current more and more restrictive situation in Russia, and RAIN TV is declining because of lack of money and because of lack of cable providers. So it's a strange feeling that we are left alone, but we are growing, and that was I think that was the main lesson for the Russian service also.
Great. Let me turn to the second question. I'm going to ask one third last question, but it's going to be a lightning round, so just prepare yourselves. But Kate, you sort of saw this helping both VOA and RFURL. What are some of the lessons that you've observed? What are the things that we should take away from the response that would help us the next time we have a crisis? And I'm going to ask this of Paul Marszalek as well.
Okay, so anytime we respond to a crisis like this when we're dealing with multiple BBG networks in a whole bunch of languages, in this case we had 3 languages going, it's always going to be a little complex and chaotic at the beginning. The first meeting's going to have 30 people in it, and that's just how it's going to be. But I do think that this is a case where we were able to take that level of complexity and get to a plan of action relatively quickly. It was really within about a week. We had a plan of here's where we are now, here's where we really need to be, here's where we need some more resources to make that happen. So I think this was a case where we actually did a very good job with that, with pulling all the right people together around the table and getting to a good plan. One of the big takeaways for me actually was when we were going out into the broader USG. In this crisis, as well as some other ones that I've worked on recently, I'm surprised by how little awareness there is of the resources that we can potentially bring to the table. So in any of these crisis situations, the US government is going to want to have some kind of media response. And in a lot of cases, they're really shocked when they hear, we have a transmitter there, we have a network of affiliates, we have journalists on the ground, we have marketing people who know this market incredibly well. And there's a lot of parts of the government that support indigenous media efforts, and they do that in these crisis situations, and that's great. That's obviously something that our government should be doing. But in a crisis, a lot of times it's the BBG networks who can respond much more quickly, because we have the name recognition. We've been in these places for 50 years, for 60 years. People on the ground know us. They're already listening to us. Throw a little bit more money our way, and we can do something really incredible. So I think in these crisis situations, it's important that we get a plan together really quickly, and then we get it out in front of people as quickly as we possibly can, so that when they're making those decisions about where to throw a little bit more money, we're in that conversation. Great, thank you. Paul, what are your thoughts about what are some of the lessons we learned to apply the next time?
Well, I think that so as to not go over things that Kate said, which were all dead on, I think we can do a better job, and this is not to suggest in any way that we haven't done a good job, so I don't want to be like Mr. Rain on the Parade guy, but just a couple things. A better use of the data that we have, because we have incredible data, and we're actually in Ukraine just about to go in the field to get even more data. So one is the use of the data that we have, and I'll give you some examples, and then attacking the silos, which has always been kind of a bugaboo for the BBG. And just to give you a little bit of vibe, and I don't want to give you a ton of numbers because on the phone I'm sure it's even harder, but this is a television market, clearly. News consumption on a weekly basis in Ukraine on television is at 96%, 41% on radio. Internet is almost exactly the same number, about 40%. Heavy use of SMS and social networking. Those are 2012 numbers. We expect the digital numbers to probably increase the next round. So, we have to just acknowledge that this is really a television play. And when we have entities that have historically separated themselves, at least in this case, by VOA doing television and RFERL doing radio, that's really not how we need to approach this moving forward. That's been identified. We don't want to separate our entities by platform. We want to separate them, if anything, by function, and mission. Other things we can see in the data, a very male lean to our Ukrainian product, almost 2-to-1 in terms of audience. And I want to thank, by the way, Bill Bell and Scott Michael and Paul Tibbetts in the research department because they do a great job in pulling all this stuff out. But the one big flag here for me is when we look at the regional split of our audience. It's really clustered in Kiev and the East. And I think you could make a really good argument. Kiev, for example, representing 34% of our current audience. And I'm sorry, the West. I think I misspoke and said the West. In the East and the South, we only have only 3.8 and 3.2% of our audience comes from those regions. And I think you can make a real easy argument that that's because we're not in the right language. And there has been a historic resistance to not do Russian in Ukraine. And we sort of identified that now, and we're getting out of that now. But I think that if you want to do a takeaway from this, we need to get RFERL on TV, and I believe firmly that we need to get on TV in Russian, and perhaps in a big way, because if we, at the board level, think that there's a resurgent Russian authoritarianism coming here, then this sort of not doing Russian in the FSU, that's a decision that still stands in Kyrgyzstan, all the stands, Tajikistan. I think we need to be out of this siloed mentality and go big into Russian regionally throughout the FSU.
Great. We're not going to debate that.
I'm not debating, supporting the argument about the better preparedness for the crisis. I think we have more than 40 language services here, and many of them have very good professional and experts in the region. So if we can better use that expertise to plan ahead with the crises, we saw that crisis coming half a year ago, but nobody really asked us much. So we would like to give this expertise, and I think other services has the same situation. That's the support of Paul's argument. I would not agree with one thing, that we have to get RFE on TV. Building television and make it happen, and quality television, it's not the easy job. So better give this job for people who know how to do it. I'm not saying they should not be there. Online television is fantastic platform, but be careful putting too much eggs in that, because we have here television that we can do much better and much more than we are already doing.
So these are, as you see, we have a lot of smart people who have a lot of good opinions. And what actually, as an aside, one of the things I love about this job is that I get to meet people like Miroslava who tell me exactly what's going to be, and then I get to meet Nenad, who's going to tell me exactly what it's going to be. And it's fantastic. So here's the lightning round, all right, folks, because we're going to get a little back on schedule. Here's the lightning round. This is your Twitter answer, 140 characters or less. No sentences. Give me phrases. And I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the first person I called on, Mariana. Okay, so you're the boss. Nenad is now out of the picture. You have the resources that you want, you need, whatever. Dan Shribny and Stengel come in with $10 million. What would you do that is different or new? Don't give me a paragraph. Give me exactly what you want to do. Couple of phrases.
Exposing corruption, one thing. And we have the resource. This is our Václav Havel fellow, Natalie Sedlecka. She is one of the team leaders studying documents left by President Yanukovych. The project is called Yanukovych Leaks, and Sedlecka will now start working on the TV pilot exposing present corruption in Ukraine, not only the corruption by the Yanukovych administration. And I believe that we should support her initiative. And I'm grateful to Miroslava, and I do agree with her that this is a big challenge for anybody to develop television. We are good at internet TV, we are good at web, and Miroslava worked in our team in Washington for several years, so we know each other well. And I think that we have to support also good new initiatives by the TV journalists that now work at RFERL Ukrainian service. Another good idea, I think, would be special projects engaging Ukrainian society, connecting Ukrainian regions. We do something like this on the radio, on the web, and we can start experimenting, doing something like this on the television. And you mentioned the Crimean site. I think it's a challenge. It will be a challenge for us, and how to continue, the answer is to develop this Crimean site. I think it has definitely the future.
That was more Facebook than Twitter, but thank you very much. Let's go right around the room. Excellent answers, by the way. Adam, what's your response?
My response is regional satellite television in several streams in Russian to hit Russian propaganda head on.
All right. Irina.
My response is internet TV. We are already doing 2.5 average hours per day, but mostly talk shows, which are more and more elaborate though. But I would immediately move to some form of news and information program, which will require additional effort from the Russian service and additional technical support for the service. I would also expand the social networking, because what Crimea showed is that Russian New Kremlin propaganda team actually created the new tool, and this tool is primarily social network, primarily Facebook and Vkontakte social network. We are still not covering all the possibilities of social networking in Russia. That would be a challenge, because we just don't have enough people to do it and don't have enough specialists. You need to have specialists from inside those networks. Those are not transparent. Those are not created in the US or in the West. Those are pretty murky Russian-created networks that you need to have a special access to. But I also want to point out that for the future, we will have a huge challenge because of the new Russian law that will take place, that will be enforced on May 9th. And this new Russian law actually punishes for up to 5 years of imprisonment for those people who call for, spread ideas of separatism, which covers Crimea right now. So what I'm saying right now, if I had money to develop, can be cut by the new restrictive legislation in Russia, and probably this new law will demand additional effort from us.
Okay, I'm going to now use my moderator privilege to ask the rest of the panelists to really stay on track with a Twitter response. But those were excellent. Paul Marzalak, give us your Twitter response.
The $10 million is better spent once you kill the silos. I like regional television. That's over the top, that's broadcast, that is satellite, supported by the language services throughout the FSU, more digital with an eye toward the viral.
Okay. Slava, we're right down the road.
We have to use our advantage being in Washington, so expand that Q&A special reporting, make it sustainable and often. Second, I think we need to give them more analysis, so I would create a maybe TV show or a couple of TV shows that brings analysis to Ukraine. Ukraine, due to the low usage of English language, is still staying outside of the world news events.
All right.
And that we need to cover that.
Got it. Adrian.
Build strong VOA Ukrainian TV partnerships with major TV channels in Ukraine like ICTV, 1+1 public television. Do that by bringing some of them over, embedding their journalists here at VOA, do co-productions, and really be the Washington Bureau for more stations.
Kate, bring us home.
More Ukrainian television for placement, some of it from RFE, and dramatically expanded Russian language video content for the whole post-Soviet space.
So I'd ask everyone here to give a round of applause to people here on the video and not here today. It's really great work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, RFE.
And by the way, I think Ukrainian service team deserve at least a gold medal for everyone. We have only 9 people.
Thank you, everybody. We're tackling a lot today, and this is, I think the sad thing probably about this is the story's not over, so I wish it was, but it certainly feels like it's just beginning. So there's a lot of work left to be done, and we'll have a chance to put some of those Twitter answers into things. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we go to our last panel of the board meeting.